Point. Sean Michael Smaller here, of course. My co-host Keaton Shaw. He's not here today. He should be returning tomorrow. Please, please do not misunderstand. I promise you, he is not ill. He is not under the weather. He is just fine. And we will be seeing him shortly. But until then, the conversation has to go on. We have to try to sort through the important topics of the day, because usually speaking, these topics are quite complex, or at least sometimes we make them too complex. Just before I get into a topic that I want to touch upon, nothing too serious to start off the morning, but first, traffic on a Tuesday. Usually I complain about it because I am flabbergasted. Why is it heavy? I can't figure out what makes Tuesday, at least where I'm living, so special. But today it was actually lighter. It was actually lighter, and traffic to the office was at least twice as fast, which was amazing, except even with the lighter traffic. They still had a police vehicle cutting through traffic with its lights and sirens blaring. And I just do wonder, Trinidad and Tobago's police service, I understand we had acting ASP Ashraf Ali saying, okay, they recognize that it is a problem, but it's a difficult one. It's not easy to deal with because it's hard to prove who has an emergency and who does not have an emergency, etc., etc. That's fine. But eventually, somebody's going to get fed up and do something foolish, like refusing to get out of a police car's way that actually is going to try to make it an emergency, that is actually trying to go deal with the situation. So I'm just saying, we can't have these false flags, these cry wolf scenarios. It might not look exactly like what you would think the boy who cried wolf would look like, but it's more or less the same thing. When you waste these sorts of alarms, we stop taking it seriously, like a car alarm. All of a sudden, who takes on car alarms when they go off in a parking lot? Nobody. It's just a thing that someone has to go and disarm. And then the car gets stolen and we wonder how did it happen. So, just a food for thought. Meanwhile, well, let me pause there, folks. I will be joined by our usual Tuesday contributor, Mr. Camille Pascal. So, today we're going to have a somewhat packed show. There's a topic that I want to get into or to revisit, one of the very first topics we spoke about here on Talking Point, and that is unfortunately our nationals who are refugees in Syria. What's going on with them? The timing with regards to the de-risking of banks, the pleas that our region is sending, and yet we still have some of our own people stuck abroad. And of course, we can't ignore what happened yesterday with regards to the vote. And there's an interesting point I want to make with regards to the communication of the Chief Secretary of the THA. A lesson, a very basic lesson to be learned. But we'll get into all of that after the break. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola.
Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
people really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
We're on set with a strength and conditioning coach. His name is Mr. Gregory Seal, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what strength and conditioning means.
For instance, in the EPL or the La Liga, where it's so high, and I'm constantly hearing young people saying that they want to play in these leagues, but these leagues are demanding physically. So if you're not preparing your bodies for that early, you're not going to make it. But we also use it as a form of fatigue monitoring.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, I am joined with our regular Tuesday contributor, former youth parliamentarian at both the national as well as regional levels. We have Mr. Camille Pascal. Good morning, Camille.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. It is my pleasure to be here joining you on this Tuesday.
Camille, boy, you're not accustomed sitting in that chair. But you sat in this chair. I don't know why that chair had to be hotter than this chair. Anyway, so one of the things I want to get into, I know we have to unpack what happened at the special sitting of the THA and what happened after.
Yes.
And I do think as a communicator, you might appreciate, maybe you didn't, I don't know if you saw Farley's whole press conference, but we'll get into that later. One of the things that I want to get into, because also as media practitioners, now the situation with the former VP of SM Jaleel, Mr. Adil Mohammed. Okay, that's a scandal, it's a crime. It does bring into questions to the extent that that behavior is here, because we don't really hear about it much. So it's a bit new. Mm-hmm. But to me, as a media practitioner, I'm a bit more interested in the accusations made by his lawyer, who is having to defend his client against allegations of child pornography that's leveled on him by the US government, right? And he is very much concerned with how our press here
is reporting on it.
Right.
And you see, the thing about it is that I think your concern, or his concern rather, at this point should be his client and the charges that his client is facing, which is 10 felony charges. Those are felony charges, are not just charged within the state. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is that that should not be your concern at this point. Your concern should be seeking to have that proper defense in place for your client if he claims that he is innocent and he claims that those charges will eventually be dropped. So, to be honest, looking at what the local media is reporting here and trying to link it all back, it just doesn't add up.
But to me, like some of the things that he's reported to have said, right? He's basically claiming that our papers is reporting that Mr. Mohammed was a child molester. Now, I haven't read all the articles before now, cover to cover, and the way how the internet works sometimes, that means I might have missed the earliest ones, right? But outside of maybe a sensational headline from one of the local newspapers, I don't remember even thinking that he was a child molester. I remember, okay, so he had child pornography. That's bad.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct, because the thing about it is that I looked at it, and even being a media literate person, I looked at it, I heard of it, I saw what I saw on the internet, and also by way of hard papers, and nowhere in it did any of the articles suggest that he is a child molester. Like continuously, I guess that's what will be proven or proved in court when that time reaches, if that's the case.
Without any direct language, I just want to know why this lawyer is even trying to make this an issue. Not just that. The Newsday has, he has a quote here. I don't know if that is an international thing, but I've never seen any group of newspapers get it so damn wrong and make my client into a child molester when he's accused of possessing photographs that got into his phone innocently enough. First of all, the way how he got the photos, that has not been proven. His motives, that has not been proven, right? But more importantly, I don't even think this lawyer, his take is correct. And the reason why it's important to me is that he is, for all intents and purposes, trying to censor the press. And I know we don't necessarily talk about what goes on in the US with regards to topics like this very often or in detail. But it happens in the US in a wide variety of ways. I don't know if he thinks just because we're a third world country, because I've heard of that before, and I've seen that before in tourism. I've heard of a tourist actually telling another tourist, just because you're in a third world country means you could demand to get your way.
Wow. You see, the thing about it is that I think what this lawyer fails to recognize is that recent, as in a couple of months ago, beginning this year, there was the whole issue of child abuse in homes and things like that, and groups, and there were allegations that there were groups within different organizations within Trinidad and Tobago that encouraged this type of behavior. And knowing that this man was the former, CEO is it? VP, yeah, former vice president of a local company that manufactures, who has had other issues in the past.
Yes.
And especially with all of that, that basically gives you a perfect context to the local newspapers and the television stations are going to run with situations like this, because it's that people want justice in instances like this. You know, we had the guy being charged from the children's home just about a month ago. So it's something that is certainly alive.
That's an interesting point you're making. Of course, the charges are from the states. We don't actually know if and what he may or may not have done in our jurisdiction.
You're absolutely correct.
And I'll just say this with regards to his lawyer professing his client's innocence, and I told you this off air. You know, there could be, depending on the circumstances, I'm not saying it's a great argument, but, you know, if he could prove that this was very recent, he very much did little interaction digitally with the photographs, and that he has a wide collection of other pornography, maybe, I don't even know if that's enough to prove anything, to be honest, right? But the fact that you have an iPhone to do this sort of thing, which is connected to an online cloud service, which will save everything and link it to all your devices, and you have a child. Pornography on all your devices. So forget the child pornography part of it. You know, I'm just wondering, the story doesn't add up. If you care for your child, you're not going to want your cloud service now to link your pornography collection
to all your devices.
Yeah.
I mean, in that case, I think it's a matter of what they intend to prove when that time reach. Because, you see, it's very technical, as I was mentioning to you, in terms of what the lawyer is essentially trying to prove. In terms of, well, he's claiming that this was downloaded by accident in a group and he wasn't even aware of it. But I think it's a matter of, it was a sting operation that was set up in terms of that's how he was arrested. So it's that they would have had good evidence to actually carry out, first of all, get permission from the department to carry out a sting operation. They wouldn't have just gone and say, here's what we're going to arrest you today. We found out that you have some images in your cloud. That doesn't make sense. So the lawyer has to come good.
Yeah, I assume there will be some sort of behavior and history that they're banking on. To me, even if it's by accident, I just don't really understand what is the motive. Because this is not just like girls in skimpy clothing, right? Apparently, it's sex acts. So in my mind, I'm like, why do you not just delete it right away?
Correct.
Right?
If you knew that.
Right? And if it's a thing with I don't like Apple, so I don't necessarily know exactly how easy it is to delete things from the cloud. If it's a thing from the cloud, again, why is this phone that you're allegedly doing it for these things connected to something that's going to save everything online for you?
And you're absolutely correct in saying that.
Well, folks, it's just an interesting thing, but the censorship on the media, that's not something that we could take lightly. If we want transparency, we need to be able to demand the truth.
Yes.
And as much as he's a private citizen, he's already convicted of a crime and it's in public. But let's take a pin on that. We'll see where this unfolds maybe later on. The U.S. courts probably are going to be faster than ours. When we come back, we should be joined by our guest to speak on our nationals stuck in Syria for the last several years. Get us an update on the women and children there. Sean Michael Small, Camille Pascal on Talking Point. This is WESN, your content capital. We'll be right back.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Martin Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Martin Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back to Talking Point. And joining us now is someone who I believe might very well be my first guest, if not one of my first guests on Talking Point. And we were speaking about an issue that I actually am quite stunned that it is still not resolved. One of the things here in the media world and that directs to some extent the national narrative is to not allow important stories to necessarily die as the news cycle continues to advance. So joining us is attorney at law Nafisa Mohammed. Nafisa, it's actually kind of interesting and fun to have you again, unfortunately, to speak on this unfortunate topic.
Yes, sure. I want to say thank you very much for enabling me to continue this conversation, because it is a matter that is affecting a significant section of the community in Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to be more realistic and to recognize that we in Trinidad and Tobago, we live in a very unique society. We have just celebrated our 60th anniversary as an independent nation. And we are quite competent, we are quite capable of resolving our issues because we have sufficient resources internally to be able to overcome the problems that we are confronted with. And this issue that we are to discuss now is an issue that continues to be prolonged, and I wish it can be brought to an end sooner rather than later.
Well, so let's remind folks at home, we're talking about somewhere along the lines of 73, is it, women and children, or has that number increased, decreased?
Yes. For some time now, since 2019, I had been invited to a meeting here in Trinidad where I was made aware of certain families who were stranded as refugees in a refugee camp in the northeastern part of Syria. As I became more and more involved, the numbers went from 15 children, it went to 26, and now we have more accurate data that indicates that there are 74 children. And 24 women who are still languishing in a refugee camp in the northeastern part of Syria. Most of them are in the Al-Roj camp.
So, of course, there are multiple camps. There are a lot of other people from multiple other countries, some of whom have been returned. Efforts have been made over the course of several years, including, of course, during COVID, I believe, to return them home because the situation in the refugee camps are very much, if we think COVID and the current inflation is bad, I really cannot imagine what it is like, not just to be stuck in a refugee camp where resources are very limited, where law and order at times could be very questionable, but then the outside world going through the economic crises that has been going through. I don't know to what extent enough aid, food, clean water, even clothing has managed to reach into all of these camps and its multiple camps. Now, we're in a very unfortunate position because it seems as though the means to get these women and children here, that's been available all the time. It's never been a question about means. And is it correct to say that once authorization is given between private donors and even the American government, we would be able to figure out a way to logistically get them home?
Sean, I'm so glad that you have put it in this context, because the long and short of it, all that is required is a decision on the part of our policymakers to be willing to want to repatriate these children and women. I can assure the state officials that all these persons who are yearning to be back home, they are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And throughout the world, many of those persons who were caught in that part of the Middle East, for whatever reason, and I'm not here to pass judgment or make comments on those reasons and those people who went across. All right, but these people, these children and women are in need of protection. This is a humanitarian crisis that involves our citizens. The relatives of these children and women have compiled a dossier with information that can help to establish the citizenship of these children and women in terms of their birth papers, passport, biodata information, and other relevant information that will help. One of the arguments coming from the state officials has been that they have no way of confirming that these are our citizens. And since 2019, Minister Stuart Young and others, they have been talking about a Team Nightingale and looking into this matter. And look at how many years have gone by. Now, Sean, last week, I was very encouraged when I saw photos with our Prime Minister meeting with members of Congress in the United States of America, together with Stuart Young. And there they were talking and lobbying for there to be a relaxation of some of the restrictions imposed by the U.S. government as it relates to some of the financial issues coming out of the FATCA legislation that we have blindly and slavishly enacted without doing a proper study in our community and in our society to know the nature of it and the kind of legal frameworks that we need. Here it is, the bigger countries came together and adopted a certain legal framework. And our Attorney General at the time would have Paris attending these meetings and came back home and slavishly amended laws without doing a proper study of the nature and extent of the problem here. Now, when you are talking about money laundering laws and restrictions, and you are talking about terrorist financing, these are serious issues, and we are all concerned about the security and welfare of our country and the citizens of our country. But there's a narrative coming out of some of these Western countries that keep painting Trinidad and Tobago in a light as though we are such a dangerous country, producing the largest number of terrorists per capita, which is a narrative that is false, it is untrue, it is without foundation. Because I know of a group that has done some intense research, and myself coming from the bowels of the Muslim community, I can say to you, Sean, that the data that we have has shown that perhaps about 130 persons from Trinidad and Tobago, a very minuscule number, left this country during the period around 2014, 15, and 16, and went across a certain part of the Middle East, which happens to be a war zone. Now, we are not condoning whatever it is, what caused them to go, and the push and pull factors. It has been analyzed to an extent, and the majority of these persons were persons who were caught up in this ideological belief, a utopian belief that they were going to live in an Islamic state with the establishment of a caliphate. And there are persons in the Muslim community who belong to different sects, and those persons who went would have been believing in a certain ideology. But you look at our history in Trinidad and Tobago, we do not have a history of terrorism. In all the religious groupings in the society, you have different sects, you have people who you would consider to be fundamentalists, and so too in Trinidad and Tobago, our Muslim community is more or less traditionalist versus fundamentalist, but that does not mean that the fundamentalists are so dangerous that they are militant extremists who have been determined to go on and fight wars and do battle and do mayhem against people. That is a narrative that needs to be rectified and needs to be better understood. Our citizens who are over there, you want to tell me, out of 74 children, at least 33 of them were born in Syria. These are children who now would be below the age of I would say, 7 years old. And you want to tell me from a law enforcement point of view that you are so afraid of these children that you have dubbed them terrorists? Last week I was appalled to read some headlines that I saw about the son of a terrorist was denied entry into the country. And I know that there were some legal proceedings that happened last week when a child was being brought back into the country to reunite with his mother after a very rigorous process had been undergone in the United States of America. This child's parents are Trinidadian, but his dad, I think, would have had dual nationality and is an American citizen. And some time ago, the American government themselves repatriated this child and his father. And the child has been placed in foster care while his natural biological mother is here in Trinidad and Tobago. And yet still there's all this hype and paranoia coming out from the state, from law enforcement, and this narrative that the media would have highlighted about the son of a terrorist. Who is a terrorist? What is a terrorist? What is our country's history?
Nafisa, we're kind of pressed for time.
You know, in Trinidad and Tobago. We do not have such a history.
Okay.
And I dare say that these cases need to be looked at in a different light. Law enforcement has their work to do.
Yes.
But you also have to look at the humanitarian consideration.
Yes.
My information suggests that that child was 7 years old when his father would have taken him across to the Middle East. His mother lives here in Trinidad. She hasn't seen that
Nafisa,
child.
we're
And
kind
I
of pressed
don't
for time. I'm not
with
sure if
all
you're
the
hearing
drama
me.
that unfolded,
Nafisa, you can
she
hear
was
us?
able to bless her eyes on her own son. Who is looking at the child protection aspect of this case in our state agencies? We have a whole new child protection legal framework that is in place. We have enough safeguards and enough mechanisms to manage the reunification of these children and women with their families and to help to reintegrate them in the society without being so
Nafisa, can you hear
paranoid
us?
and so fearful. And we need to stop that narrative to make it appear as if these children and women are so dangerous and deadly that they ought not to be brought back home into their home country and reunited with their families. This is my concern, that so many years have gone by and the state officials are continuing with this very Islamophobic and xenophobic attitude and approach without being willing to sit down and talk to persons in the country, in the community, including myself, who has served this country and served in government and understand some of the ramifications, and to be able to help to work out a durable solution to this problem that continues to exist, which involves the repatriation of 74 children and 24 women who are languishing in certain refugee camps in the Middle East.
Well, Nafisa, I want to thank you for that. We are unfortunately more or less out of time. I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, very quickly, to what extent does the law affect them being able to come into Trinidad, come back into Trinidad? Very quickly.
Could you just ask me that question again? To what extent
does the law affect the present laws in terms of anti-terrorism?
We have had a terrorism law in our statute book since 2005. It was amended over time. In 2018, the then Attorney General made further amendments that designate certain territories, and if you are in a designated territory, you know, there are certain restrictions with movements and so. But these children and these women were there long before that law came into being, and therefore it cannot have retroactive effect, and it is something that, it's just a policy decision that is required, you know. We have enough laws in place to help. If you have reason to believe that any of these children or women would be high risk in terms of a national security point of view, we have systems in place. We have a new juvenile justice system that has been implemented, which is based on rehabilitation and a rehabilitative approach. So if it is that you have evidence or reason to believe that any of them would be so high risk, we have the mechanisms in place. But what is more significant is that the relatives of these children and women have signed a document agreeing to collaborate with the state agencies to help in the reunification and in the reintegration of these people in the society together with other NGOs, and to relieve the state of the burden of having to deal with it. You don't need a militant, heavy law enforcement approach. Look at each case on its merit. Most of these people, they are children and women who are in need of protection, not persecution.
Well, Nafisa, that's more or less it. We're out of time. I want to thank you again for coming on to speak on this. It seems as though we invite you on every few months, and unfortunately the situation hasn't seen much positive change, despite the fact that the very people who our government seems to be wary of are some of the people telling us, hey, get your people home. But we'll have to cut it there. Folks, when we come back, we'll get into all of the Tobago business. This is WESN, your content capital. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Welcome back to Talking Point. We just had Attorney at Law Nafisa Mohammed speaking about the 74 children and 24?
Yes, 74 children, 24 women.
24 women. No men, no militant fighters, right?
33 of the children were actually born in Syria during that period of time.
And they're minors. That's more or less the main indication. They're not just minors. They are very young kids. I'd just like to point out, if we want to take our protecting our women and children seriously in the country, they are of our blood, right? Yeah. Like, they've been there for years. I don't know if people really could understand what that is like. We're complaining about, hey, cost of chicken is going up. I don't know if they know where their next meal.
Correct, yeah.
So, but we have to leave that there. The lack of any sort of resolution or even movement in that is just frustrating.
Yeah, no progress at all.
But let's go to the situation. They had a special session with the Tobago House of Assembly where they acknowledged the presiding officer received the letter of resignation and they proceeded to choose a new deputy chief secretary. So let's take a look at a clip from those proceedings yesterday.
Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to nominate for the position of Deputy Chief Secretary Assemblyman Dr. Faith B. Israel.
May the seconder now rise. Madam Presiding Officer, I stand to second the nomination of Dr. Faith B. Israel as Deputy Chief Secretary. Are there any other nominations?
Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to nominate Mr. Watson Solomon Duke.
May I have a seconder? Will the seconder now rise?
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to second the nomination of Mr. Watson Duke as Deputy Chief Secretary.
Madam Presiding Officer, on a point of order, the election of Deputy, on a point of order,
Excuse me, I'm on my feet. Member.
On a point of order, Madam Presiding Officer, the election of a Deputy Chief Secretary can only be held among the elected members of the House.
I agree. The seconding of this election can only be done by that of elected members of this House. Unfortunately, Ms. Petal Daniel Benoit is not an elected member of this House. With there being no other nominations, I now declare Dr. Faith B. Israel the duly elected Deputy Chief Secretary.
Well, that was the drama in ETHA. It was a very short, efficient session. More on that when we get to the next clip. Short and efficient in politics. But I think the main thing was the fact that everybody was kind of surprised that the minority leader decided to interject for Lord only knows why. He only knows. I don't even know if the Lord knows. Only Kelvin Morris knows, right?
A shameless attempt on his part, which his political leader and Tobago PNM, Tobago Council leader, Anthony Dennis, has condemned, because he said that they had no terms of conversation of him doing that. But not only that, Kelvin Morris has come out to apologize. In fact, he said he apologizes for attempting to stroke more discord. And he said the mistake is one that was a grave error in judgment, where he attempted to stroke some more discord by nominating Mr. Watson Duke as the alternative choice for the House. Why he did that, as you said, I don't know. Yeah. Nobody knows.
Because there's no other PNM councillor to back him up, to at least second him, right? Sorry, Alderman. The councillor is not able, right, as a point of proper procedure. And all it accomplished is that, for better or worse, it exposed an indicator, right? It might not actually be true, right? We don't know for sure where loyalties lie in the PDP among the aldermen. But at the very least, it appears as though no one in the THA wanted to second that.
Well, the thing about it is that this is what I see it as. Had an elected member, one of the assemblymen, stand up and second the motion of Kelvin Morris after what was stated by the presiding officer, they would have had to go to a vote, basically, a division. And we would have then, and only then, I think we would have gotten to see who actually supports Farley and who actually doesn't support him. Because if it was that they know, if someone had seconded the motion and they knew that Farley enjoys more of the support, and they went to vote essentially, and that means that they would have supported Watson Duke, it would have kind of put them in a specific light. They would have now been seen in a specific light. So it would have kind of been a castaway, basically, from that particular bunch of people who are now standing with Farley.
I mean, it's a very tricky thing, right? Because you could try to play the game, but perceptions in the room, and you can't necessarily strategize. So we're assuming nobody anticipated what Kelvin Morris is going to do, if even his own fellow PNM party member and Tobago Council leader didn't know.
Or even Watson Duke.
Oh, right. And so if no one could anticipate it to strategize, then there's a risk in seconding the nomination, because who knows if you're going to be coordinated to get the results you want.
Yeah.
So it's not the be-all and end-all, as you said, of who supports who. But I do think, regardless, the fact that no one was looking to second the nomination, or maybe because his supporters knew he resigned, why put up the fight,
well, yeah,
right? And the problem, though, is the perception looks bad because Duke was the one that brought out the whole motion of no confidence, and he threw that threat out there first. And then when Farley said, well, you know what, that's fine, let's do it. Let's compete in motions of no confidence. Let's see who's going to win. Duke was the one that backed down first, too. So the perception, I don't think, really favors him.
Well, you're correct in that regard, because no one, as you said, no one stood up to second. Even after the presiding officer had ruled, someone could have still interjected and asked for them to now be the person that seconds the motion to nominate Watson Duke as the deputy presiding officer. But no one stood up, so it says a lot about what is happening internally, not just within the PDP, but within the executive of the THA.
So Ansel Dennis disagreed with the move, right? With what Kelvin Morris did as the minority leader. And if I haven't said it before on the show, I will just say this. You are the minority leader. You are in a position of prominence that you would otherwise not normally be in. This is where you could have made your political name. And to me, Kelvin Morris is just kind of doing the typical, what all the other politicians do. And this move, when we think about it, is really not that out of line with how politicians operate in TNT.
And you're correct. You're correct in that regard. But I still think he comes from the PNM as a party, and to me, that's not how they function based on what I've seen in the past.
With this sort of move?
Yeah, not only with that sort of move, but with anything. I am shocked to see that Kelvin Morris has jumped out of himself essentially and decided to nominate Watson Duke, and shamelessly so allowing your councillor to second the motion, and the councillor isn't supposed to second the motion according to the standing orders of the THA.
I mean, it would be funny to actually have a close-up on Kelvin Morris to see if he realized in the moment when she started to speak, did he know that it was incorrect? But I assume not. I'm not sure if he even is aware of the proper procedure.
He probably wasn't aware because she would not have stood up as the person.
Not just that. She might have done it on her own accord, but then when the Chief Secretary was trying to declare the point of order, he is trying to interject like what we see in Parliament, and the presiding officer had to stand up and tell him.
My legs. Yeah.
So to me, it seemed as though he wasn't even aware of the rules, and I'm just like, dude, you are the guy in that room for your party.
Yes.
You have to be aware. There's nobody else.
And you're absolutely correct in saying that.
So, just before we end this segment, well, actually, we have another clip. This is the press conference after the special meeting. Now, the THA, the Chief Secretary, for the most part, he wanted to clear up several things. So let's take a look at this clip, and then we can discuss it after.
All lawyers with sense and any knowledge of law has dismissed as a nuisance the letter that came in the dead of night seeking to stop the sitting today. If those lawyers had any grounds to stand on, they would have gone to court bright and early this morning to seek injunctive relief. And the fact that that did not happen tells you that they are making an argument for form over substance, which holds no water when it comes to law. I wish to point out that I have been very deliberate in my communication with the media and with the public. In fact, since this debacle started, I gave one press conference, one radio interview, and one newspaper interview. That's all I gave. My silence, which I treat as being golden, I think was absolutely necessary to ensure that the business of governing Tobago did not get muddied with all of the back and forth. And I did not think that the back and forth was necessary, given some of what we're hearing in this space are unfounded. I wish to use this platform to categorically denounce and deny some extremely wild allegations that I have seen made by the now former Deputy Chief Secretary with regards to collecting bribes or collecting monies elsewhere. Let me indicate that I have already been in consultations with my lawyers, inclusive of a King's Counsel. I intend to pursue legal action that will treat with that matter, which means that I will not be wasting precious time to debate these falsehoods in the public space. A lot of what you see in this space, all of these noises, are actually sponsored noises, and I have not just reliable information, but irrefutable evidence that a lot of this is sponsored by those who do not want to see me bring before the Tobago public matters concerning the audit report, which I will be delivering to the people of Tobago come Thursday, and you will get an even clearer picture as to what transpired over the last 2 weeks and where we need to go.
So that was the Chief Sec, more or less, having a very quick press conference just before they had to fly to Trinidad. Yes. And to me, yes, you know, after Camille, you said that because of that, that's why it had to be quick and efficient. To me, the way how that THA special sitting and the way how that press conference, that should be how our government politics should be run. Not this 40 minutes to speak on a bill.
And I think that's one of the issues that persons had with the Prime Minister's press conference during the height of the pandemic. You came every Saturday or every other Saturday and you spoke for an hour and something, and then you still have questions by the media.
But I could forgive that because he speaks once a week.
No, but at times some of the things were just repetitive.
I know, but Parliament, when everybody is speaking for 40 minutes,
a whole other story.
I have less sympathy for the complaints about speaking time because of COVID. Now, I get it; it doesn't seem fair, but I find everybody is overboard.
I think they may be back to normal based on the fact
that's
that
unfortunate.
Yeah.
But now with the contents of the press conference, now Farley said that he is going to sue Watson Duke. Farley also said that the injunction that was supposedly put to stop the special session actually was not an injunction filed in the courts. That's, I believe, I'm paraphrasing there. They didn't go to the courts anymore.
I think it's a matter of just the person, the Freedom Law Chamber, which is owned by Anand Ramlogan, former Attorney General. So he would have just written those letters to the President. I think one was copied to the presiding officer of the THA, and probably the office of the Chief Secretary, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think Watson Duke is party to it in terms of his name wasn't referenced really in the matters.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that is not necessarily legally binding. You need to actually get a court to
correct, but
send the order.
But it's that the office of the President and the office of the presiding officer still has to respond to it.
Well, all right, fair enough. But I guess at the end of the day, we see the result. If there's any further legal challenge, we'll see the result.
Well, I think that there may be some further legal challenge because I'm expecting that they would go.
The problem is, though, Duke resigned of his own accord. So
I think they didn't have any issue with him resigning, but I think the issue was really with the proper format or channels in which it's supposed to have been done. In terms of,
I think this is one of those cases, though, where. I mean, I don't know if I want to go through a long trial. I don't know if I want the state to have to go through a long trial.
Basically.
Just because the procedure of what someone who you are claiming, who is technically in the position of the victim based on your scenario, was wrong. Like, he is the one that got the procedure wrong, not the THA, not the Chief Secretary,
yeah, because it's not that the office of the Chief Secretary is writing letters. You as the individual, you are writing letters. So you are supposed to know, in terms of my resignation, this is who I am to address.
I think this is one of those cases, both by how we see some of the other members of the Assembly with their public speaking, with Duke's lack of knowledge of governance and procedure, even, well, forget the PNM's, Kelvin Morris's lack of knowledge of proper procedure. I do think that this is an interesting situation where these aren't politicians. They weren't career politicians. They didn't come up through the party all their lives. There was no PDP youth arm.
Yeah, because none of them have actually served in a THA before, either as an assemblyman or whatever. They've served probably in divisions in terms of working, but none of them are all brand
or not even necessarily in divisions.
Correct.
In the past, there have been instances where a non-politician I have found the lacking to be a negative. I do wonder in this case, though, where you're trying to get something new, the lacking is not necessarily a bad sign.
And you're correct here in certain instances, but I mean, some of them it would have been a longer period of time for them to get familiarized with what is required of them in terms of being a secretary or an assistant secretary and the work that they can do and the things that they cannot do. So I think in that regard, that's where the positive and the negative lies. Because somebody who would have been in it before, they would have been more accustomed and know how a division is supposed to function.
Basically, you know, to me, they're not a well-practiced used car salesman trying to sell you a piece of junk. You know, they're actually coming in all earnest trying to sell cars. But we have to take a break for news on the hour. There's still one more thing to unpack from that press conference. Of course, the main claim made at the end there. But we have news on the hour, so we'll break for that. Of course, Camille and myself will return, and after we will take your phone calls, hear from you, the viewers. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital. We'll be right back.
to your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 4 bandits killed by police following a robbery and murder of security guards. Met Office on alert for tropical wave. THA minority leader apologizes for creating discord with Vote for Duke. And internationally, 11 children killed in Myanmar airstrikes. Now for the details. 4 bandits have been killed in a police shootout following a deadly robbery at Pennywise Plaza, Laramine. The security officers were transporting a large sum of cash when they were ambushed and killed. Acting Commissioner of Police McDonald Jacob provided an update on the incident.
They coordinated, tracked the vehicle, followed the vehicle, the men abandoned the vehicle, robbed someone else of the vehicle, and the police continued in hot pursuit and they will shoot out with the police. They entered a house in Laramine and the gunfight continued. At the end of it, 4 of the assailants were killed by the police, and at this point, 3 AR-15 were recovered and 1 pistol.
The deceased security officers have been identified as Jeffrey Peters and Officer Batiste. 4 of the bandits were killed by police inside a house at Pond Street, Laramine, during a shootout. Another security officer is said to be fighting for his life following the attack. The Met Office expects tropical wave to affect Trinidad and Tobago. The office says that regardless of development, this system is expected to bring unstable conditions resulting in moderate to heavy rainfall accompanied by thunderstorm activity affecting Trinidad and Tobago and the Windward Islands. The system currently has a low potential for cyclone development in the next 5 days. The wave is currently a disorganized area of scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms moving westward at 18 to 28 kilometers per hour. There is the possibility of gradual development over the next few days. Minority Leader Kelvon Morris has apologized for attempting to stoke some more discord at yesterday's sitting of the Assembly Legislature. In a statement, Mr. Morris said that he made a grave error in judgment where he attempted to stoke some more discord by nominating Watson Duke as an alternative choice for the House to have a vote. Indeed, it was one that he deeply regrets, and he said he wished he could undo. However, it's a lesson that he would never forget and one he would never repeat moving forward. In international news now, at least 11 children have been killed and 15 more are missing after army helicopters shot at a school in northern Myanmar, UNICEF said. Troops in helicopters opened fire last Friday on the Temple School, which was located in a rebel stronghold region. Myanmar's military government said it had been an attack on insurgents they claimed were hiding in the school in Let Yet Kon village. The school's students ranged from those in kindergarten to young teenagers. Well, that was News to the Hour on WESN. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for watching.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets, $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Arima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Marte Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Talking Point. Show Michael Small alongside Camille Pascal, our, well, youth parliamentarian, but also political scientist extraordinaire. One of the last things made in the press conference just before we opened the phone lines, the Chief Secretary, Farley Augustin, he mentioned that these last 2 weeks, there's something behind it. He believes it is with regards to an audit of the THA that he's going to present either this Thursday or next week Thursday. This Thursday. Yeah. And he said not only will it be more apparent, I think the terms used is you will see correlation and causation with regards to that fact. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the possibilities to prove his case could be, so I hope that it's good, but I really don't have an idea.
I found it kind of strange, to be quite honest, because Duke wouldn't have been in the THA at that particular time. So if Farley is claiming that some of the allegations
he was an
made,
assemblyman.
Duke?
Yeah, Duke and Farley, they were assemblymen. They weren't
well, yeah, they were assemblymen, but they didn't necessarily have divisions.
Right.
So they weren't in control of any money per se. So I found it strange that Farley is saying that some of the allegations made by Duke over the last 2 weeks is really in an effort to prevent him from releasing the report, the audit report, which is to be presented on this Thursday, because they weren't in control of any money. I don't understand the correlation there. So it's something that I guess he would expand more upon on Thursday.
Could it be that by going through the various divisions, I know it was supposed to be from before the election, but could it be that in the process of going through the paperwork, you discover stuff that's been happening within the last 8 months?
Well, yes and no, because as you mentioned, as you quite correctly said, it's supposed to be previous to them. It's not really supposed to be from their tenure, because they are the ones that promise us accountability and transparency and everything else. So I'm guessing they wouldn't necessarily audit themselves. I don't know of any government that has audited themselves.
Well, and herein lies the thing, and maybe it's idealistic of me, but if they want to practice what they preach, I could easily see if Farley is idealistic and not just a slick political operator, he's like, well, hold on, I found this. I have to make sure it hasn't started now.
It hasn't started now.
So that's the only thing that makes sense to me, because the only other theory, based on what you said, is we would have to try to find some link of the Tobago Council, PNM, to Watson Duke. And while I think that their interests are aligned, we haven't seen anything near enough to make such a speculation.
Yes, and you're correct. Even with them owning companies.
I mean, that's the other thing. Maybe it's some sort of private interest that we don't necessarily know about. Who knows? Hopefully, I hope, because he promised us some sort of clarity on Thursday, I hope that it could deliver. I guess the problem is he might be seeing it from the lens of, well, I see behind the scenes, but what could be said publicly.
That's it, because with these reports, I think, similarly to the report into live sport, where it was leading Parliament with all the people being able to properly respond, which essentially throughout the entire case, which is the case with Gary Griffith now and the firearms audit report.
Yes.
It's a matter of Gary Griffith wants the opportunity to respond, and that's why the Attorney General held an entire press conference, was it last week or week before last week, to state that here's what we're going to treat this in a particular manner. So it's probably that we're not going to get the report in its entirety, what we're going to...
Well, the irony is, hopefully this situation doesn't go like those. But I could see why someone would look to press Farley now at the 11th hour. If he actually did give them a chance to respond to the allegations, that means they know what's happening. But I think everyone might assume the they is Watson Duke. The they might not be Watson Duke. The they might be party finances
and you're correct.
Of the PDP.
And you're absolutely correct. Who would have possibly gotten contracts in a not so transparent manner or not so accountable manner over the years, which would look bad on their part now if it is in fact that's so.
Consider this. I always wondered if one of the reasons why Party A doesn't go after Party B is because you don't necessarily want to expose something that everybody's doing, even if you're not doing it now. So the UNC is not going to expose certain things because they want potentially the capacity to do so when they get into power. So could it be that that's kind of where the linkage is that if you expose these things, some people or some financiers are looking at their revenue streams and saying, but we were depending on this to
because they will only go after certain, like the PNM kind of goes after UNC lawyers in terms of legal fees over the years. But it's interesting to hear what the viewers would have to say.
Yes, okay, you're right, you're quite right. I have taken up too much time. Folks, let's open up the phone lines. You could call in on this matter. You could call in on if you have an opinion on the de-risking of our banks, on the factor, on our kids, 74 kids. I believe it was, well, the count before when we had the first interview, 73. So it's kind of chilling that we could find more of our national children.
Yes.
We have our caller on the line from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Small and Pascal.
Morning.
You know, what I want to know is why politicians need these expensive vehicles, boy, and this is the people who does be talking about we want to do things for the people, for the poor people, the people suffering, and all these things they continue to say. But you need a car for $2.3 million, you understand? And people suffering when you could buy a car for $400,000. When I want a car and I can buy a tricycle.
Yeah.
And these people and them have all this, the public money, and doing all kind of crap with it. And I want the opposition to stop mingling with the police and the DPP. Stop mingling with them. Let them do their job and stop trying to make people believe that Indians and Syrians and Chinese cannot do crime. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. I think. Oh.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll respond after. We have a call from St. James. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. How are you?
We're good. I
don't know if you all could shed some light on this. Seeing that Watson Duke took his party and left it and with it in his back pocket. If they were the other people in the THA would form another party, and if you could shed some light on this, whether in fact people voted for PDP, voted for Watson Duke, or if they voted for the individual rather than the party. I don't know if you all could shed some light on that.
Yeah. I will shed some light on it right after we take this call from Mearu.
Okay.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. And it's a beautiful day to have a good day. And I must say this in the absence of my co-host. And gentlemen, this is a farmer on the ground here.
Yes.
And I'm just saying this to you. A little thing happened, and I was a bit confused with how it went. That big expo they had with the government, and where they showcased and said it was so successful, 99% of the farmers was not there who does cultivate, who does grow, who does develop, who face any problems on the ground. But yet still are putting things in a package and saying, yes, we can promote this and we can promote that. Where is the vision? Where is the processing plant? Where is the occupation of we putting this machinery in place? Where is the farmers? We have farmers with tractors and global warming taking place, and we can't find a way to go forward. And yet we want to have our next one in South. For who? Thank you very much, fellas.
Thank you, caller.
So let me quickly address the point raised by the caller from St. James, which is whether or not parties and the THA have any kind of, does it have any effect essentially with Watson Duke now saying, yes, what I've taken my party away, I've removed Farley and I've removed Dr. Faith B. Israel as the deputy political leaders.
Because he has used things like basically claiming ownership of the PDP.
Thankfully, to run an election, you can either run as an independent candidate or on a party ticket. But it really and truly doesn't have any bearing based on the THA Act, which is a point that was raised by many political commentators over the last 2 weeks.
And even in the election.
And even within the election. So, as Farley did yesterday, he thanked Mr. Ian Robinson for the work that they did back then on the THA Act, because it really would not make a difference what you go in with his party or removing every single one of those members within the executive really and truly has no bearing on the THA.
It would have made a big difference, right?
Yeah.
I'll have also more to add on this, but we have a caller from Chaguanas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, caller.
Good day, gentlemen.
Good day.
I don't know, why didn't you answer your last caller who asked about these expensive cars for politicians? I explained that to you.
We have a backlog. So since you've given me the chance, I will say that I agree with the caller in that I think all politicians, if they want to tell me that you're concerned about the poor people and you are potentially replacing your car every 2 years with a 1 point something or 2 point something million dollar car, I will have a hard time believing you. I think it's a bad message. Now, with regards to the allegations against MP David Lee, I don't know if it's true or not. I think the perception is a lot of politicians do it. And I have no problem going after MP David Lee if we go after all the politicians who potentially abuse the allowance or the tax write-off or whatever for vehicles.
You missed the whole point. The point I made before was the whole thing is illegal. Under our Constitution, the only person entitled to a cause of right is the President. All the rest are supposed to be traveling officers who are required to use a car in the performance of their duties. The politicians in this country are not required to use a car in the performance of their duties. So that whole law giving them that is totally unconstitutional. That is the point I made before, but apparently you forgot.
Sorry, I forgot your point.
I will address it after.
I forgot your point,
I really want to
Professor.
address it after. But
we have another.
Yes, we do have a caller from Digo Martin on the line. Digo Martin, good morning.
Hi guys, hi Kemuel, thanks, good morning.
Good morning.
Guys, just so you know, Nafisa Mohammed will talk non-stop if you give me the chance.
No, but I mean,
I could
understand.
Just very strong voice, so she could not have heard you.
I could understand why, though. In this case, I very much sympathize.
Yeah.
No, that is true. She's very passionate, and she starts and she does go on and on, but she would not have heard you. But this situation in Syria, this is really brutal, and the children should not have to pay for the sins of their fathers who joined ISIS because of the caliphate ideology. But then how do you strike the balance? How do you know that the 17-year-old is not now a delinquent or hasn't formed similar ideology? And our authorities can't even deal with ordinary things. This is complex and delicate, and it happens in other countries. There was the case with the British girl, Shamina. I don't know if you remember. She joined ISIS at 15 as a child bride. She fought for her citizenship, and she lost. She was allowed to return to the UK to fight for it, but she lost. She's now only 22 or so, and she belongs nowhere. You know, actions have consequences, and it just brings us to a larger issue of education. Our teenagers and students need to learn this, because I watched one of these guys in one of those prestige schools. He was very young, bright, wonderful character, but he had issues at home, and he strayed. And he was one of the people who ended up there. And all of us, we were so concerned when we realized this. And again, I think he got married and had children. I don't know what has happened to them. So, you know, this is really a difficult situation.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
okay, thanks.
Sorry, yes, we have another caller. Sorry for that, but thank you for your contribution. We're going to try to also comment on that as well. We have someone from
Sawa on the line. Sawa, good morning.
Hello, a very good morning to Sean Michael.
Morning.
Yeah, and your co-host, I could never quite get the young man's name properly.
Pascal.
Pascal. All right, okay. Sean Michael and Pascal, my reason for calling this morning is this matter involving the former Attorney General, Anand Ramlogan, in the witness tampering case. As far as my knowledge is concerned, it was supposed to resume yesterday, the 19th of September.
Yes.
I haven't gotten hold of my newspaper today to know what is the status. It was supposed to continue under the Chief Magistrate Maria Busby Earl Cadell.
Yeah.
So I don't know what is his status. Do we, could you, any of you two gentlemen, because I mean, this is a matter concerning a high profile.
Just a quick search says
I'm not
that
pronouncing guilt or innocence either way, but
no, so apparently
it's
delayed.
Understood, Kola, but I think if I'm not mistaken, Anna, and they had filed, his legal team had filed something within recent time that kind of would delay it. So
Yes,
that's probably why it wouldn't have started back.
I spoke to Sean Michael and Keaton last week,
Yes.
and that matter was filed about 2 months ago.
So the constitutional
I quoted
claim.
in newspaper, it was I don't have the article in my hand
Yes.
right now, but that was, I don't think it will take 2 months for that matter, for that matter that they filed.
Well, Kola, the constitutional claim that is kind of putting a wrench in the works, that has been adjourned to November the 4th. So the actual hearing or matter before Earl Cadell, that's delayed to January the 9th because of the constitutional claim. So they're using one procedure to delay the other. That's what it seems like, whether rightfully or wrongfully.
But we do have Tunapun on the line.
Justice system seems to be going in circles and
I
we can't
know.
go anywhere.
That is our reality, Kola, and it's something that we should get
Keaton has been speaking about this even before Talking Point. It's one of the things that, and it's so complex. But we have another caller from Tunapuna.
Tunapuna, good morning.
Hi, morning.
Hello, good morning to the panel.
Morning.
Yeah. Right now in our country, I'm sure it will affect, and it is affecting all of us, whether big, whether small, whether lower or higher income group. We want to know what is really going on. It seems as if Trinidad is under siege. With these big guns coming into this country, you know what will happen eventually? All the business people will close down, leave this place, because now they're attacking these people. What is really taking place now? We are even afraid to even go and do shopping too, because we might innocently get killed while shopping. We are not being protected. I would like to see more being done from our minister, who is the head of national security. Our national security minister, they have to start to get serious and put a hand in this and prevent, because they don't have a factory in Trinidad that produce all those dangerous automatic guns.
Yes.
It's time they do something about it, because they have to clean it from the root to get rid of these problems.
Correct,
It's getting out of hand. We are scared. Every day is something going on. We are scared in our own homes. Thank you.
Thank you,
Paula. But I want to address the issue of the call from...
Just want to say, I think, folks, that's the last call, because we have a backlog to respond to.
Yes. So in terms of the tax exemption, I think our professor was saying that it's not a matter of it's in the Constitution, but it really comes from the Salary Reviews Commission. Remember, they have their annual report, which is debated by the Parliament in terms of the perks that are allowed to certain high-profile persons, not just parliamentarians, but people who hold certain positions, the Solicitor General, all those people in authority.
I think depending in the ministry, from what I understand, that perk is more widespread than you think, and it might have been granted in lieu of
That's absolutely what I was about to say, and not only that, but people may be shocked to know that assistant commissioners of police do have this perk. Police officers, when you are at a certain rank, you can access tax exemption. I know this for a fact.
So assistant deputy commissioner.
Correct. So as soon as you reach a certain position, if it's in service commission, permanent secretary, they have some level of perk as well in terms of vehicles.
So I think, Professor, the point is somebody changed the law. And now we could debate on whether or not the law should have been changed. I think that there could have been a scenario where it would have been fine, but I'm assuming that it was not necessarily done in the best way.
But what I think a point that's important to note is that it's not something that they can just access and just say they want to buy 5 cars. It's that I think it's every 2 years or every 3 years it can be accessed. So people should know that.
But even still, like...
But even still, yeah.
$1 million car.
$1 million car.
And for the poor people, as I drive my 2-year-old Benz to get my brand new Benz,
which I just sell,
which I just sell technically for a profit, because if I have any cost reduction on the car,
then you would have you're going to
potentially I'm going to still profit even if I just do it normally. So it's not necessarily illegal in some cases, ethical.
I think that's the sense that people will see.
You can't buy chicken, but I have a $2 million car. I just wanted to say with regards to the THA, I believe it was asked. I believe that the members of the THA are not necessarily looking to leave the PDP, right?
Yes, it was asked.
But I think that ultimately speaking, we can't necessarily discount the fact that there's going to be a divorce. But we don't know if the divorce is going to be them leaving the PDP or Watson Duke being removed in internal elections from the PDP. We don't know how it's going to turn out. We don't know how much support he has or doesn't have.
And you're correct in saying that. So I think it's a situation that still needs to be not explored, but really we need to hear more about. And that's why I was saying last week, Friday, when I was here, it's that we kind of now understand the positions of those assembly members within the THA based on what Farley would have said yesterday, the fact that they supported him, no one raised any objections to his nomination of Dr. Faith B. Israel. So it's that they seem at this point to be together. They seem to be together. The
rest of the assembly.
Yes, that may not necessarily be how they looked in terms of standing behind him yesterday. Because I kind of looked at body language and analyzing them.
Could be, I am not a career politician. I'm just uncomfortable standing here. That there's always that possibility.
For the position, because you do recall, or you should note rather, that if one of them is to now push away themselves, Farley has the authority or the power to now remove them from either being the secretary or the assistant secretary.
So question, if it was Parliament, the standings of the majority party would be a big deal, right? Based on how Westminster system works.
Westminster system, they are supposed to resign. If I am, which is what happened with Robert LaHunt, based on the disagreement, they are supposed to resign, although he was a senator and not an elected member of the House. So it happened with Ford Khan before, where he removed himself and became a backbencher.
No, but again, the Prime Minister would be the political leader. Yes. So that leads me to the question of, because it doesn't work quite the same, could it be that this situation might go under wraps until that point in time where there might be an internal party elections that might force the issue one way or the other?
Well, yes and no, but it still wouldn't affect the runnings of the THA in terms of
until the next
in terms of being
election.
aligned to a particular party, yeah.
But then now, again, so either the internal election could force the issue or the next THA election could force the issue, because under what slate you're running under,
correct,
or for all we know, half of
I mean, they can run independent.
They could all run
as well form his own party.
You don't need a party in the THA, as you mentioned. Also, just with regards to the minors, I think there's an ethical question, the consequences for minors, because they didn't make the decision to go there themselves. I don't even know if the child bride made the decision to get married at 15. I could be wrong. I don't know how you improve intent. With regards to the female adults, the mothers, that's one thing. That's even more difficult to figure out. With regards to the minors, and even a 17-year-old now would have been less than 17 then, and still legally a minor. Can't drink alcohol, we're going to hold them accountable for their father. But what the caller, Diego Martin, said, I don't think she's necessarily wrong to bring it up and have the discussion. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's one that needs a lot of explanation. I think that's the issue that was raised by the former Attorney General Faris when they were speaking about it even back then.
I'm still not happy though with how they're managing the situation.
Yeah.
If you're going to reach to that conclusion, I think the way how you get there is very bad, and I don't have confidence in the decision if the means, I don't have confidence in the means.
You're correct.
Well, we're more or less out of time with the rapid fire answer segment there. Kevin Pascal, thank you for joining me here on a Tuesday.
Sure.
And just one last thing before we go, I noticed in the news that the Ministry of Education is changing how they assess students from national testing to ongoing assessment.
Yes, I saw that.
I would just like to point out they're making changes to the syllabus again. So you know what this means? All of the teachers, private and public, will now be scrambling to try to learn the new system rather than comfortably teaching what they're supposed to be teaching our kids who are already behind. They're going to be further behind by this. I don't know. Maybe the implementation might work out. I don't know. But
it's left to be seen. It's left to be seen.
There's a lot left to be seen. This is bad. There's so much things.
This is true that we just prolong issues continuously and continuously and continuously.
TNT is not a place that is Neverland, folks. But even in Neverland, as my co-host would say, as our co-host would say, today is the day
to have a good day.
Yeah, there we go. Folks, we will see you tomorrow. Karen should be joining Keaton and myself. And who knows, maybe Camille might have some extra time later in the week. We don't know. Wink, wink. But this is all for Talking Point today. Tune in for more good, great local content on your content capital, WESN. We will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
WESN. Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring Three Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Marte Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
I am Rondell Donowa, and you are watching WESN, the content capital. People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
We're on set with a strength and conditioning coach. His name is Mr. Gregory Seal, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what strength and conditioning means.
For instance, in the EPL or the La Liga, where it's so high, and I'm constantly hearing young people saying that they want to play in these leagues, but these leagues are demanding physically. So if you're not preparing your bodies for that early, you're not going to make it. But we also use it as a form of fatigue monitoring.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
I'm Andy Johnson, and you're watching WESN, the Content Capital. The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through?